So there are all of these descriptions right here.
I see it.
We are streaming, but we haven't been. Just because I think it's weird. I don't want to run. I should be sitting on that side.
Okay, I'd like to call the City Infrastructure Committee meeting for January 10th to order. A roll call.
Councilor Moore?
Here.
Councilor Gibbs?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
If there's any persons who wish to address the council on agenda items only, they could come forward now. Not seeing any, we'll move to the reports. Department representatives for discussion with the councilors.
What's that? The only thing we have on the agenda for this evening is a resolution that enables the mayor to sign into an agreement for the pedestrian.
So item number 4, the Marshalli program, which is the PSAP, Pedestrian Safety Act Action Plan. So what this does is prior to previous engineering aid leaving, he applied for this grant. And this gave us funding for 2 intersections to upgrade pedestrian safety crossings. We had applied for up to 8 different intersections. DOT approved 2 of them. The intersection at the old Lori Cantwell's office right there with Walgreens and Kenny Drug Stewart.
New Sun.
And then the intersection just to the east of that, Prospect and Prospect and Cordelia Street. So basically what we're asking for here is to approve for $43,000 for design purposes for the Cordelia Street and Prospect intersection. We're actually trying to look further into the possibility of getting grant money for Route 3 construction or reconstruction. So it doesn't make sense to start with that intersection, because if we're gonna redo all of Route 3, then there's no sense of spending money to redo that intersection and then tear it all out if we get a grant from the state to redo Route 3. So we're holding off on that. We're looking into getting grant money for that, but right now we want to move forward with the other intersection. So this $43,000 is to go out to a design engineer for design purposes, so we can get a design here end of winter and hopefully get a start on construction at the end of the year.
Okay, thanks.
And that comes out of?
So this is, most grants you have a match. This is actually 100% federally funded.
Okay.
So basically right now we put the money forward and then the federal government or the state will reimburse us for it.
Okay.
We'll be coming forward, once the design is complete, and we'll be asking for more money against the same grant. So this is the first couple requests.
Okay.
So instead of asking for everything up front, we'll do a little bit at a time in each phase. So after the design phase, we'll come back to you for construction. We'll build it, and then we'll reimburse.
Great.
And will this, I have a question, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
And of course, this will all be ADA compliant?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what the whole purpose of this is.
Thank you.
We're moving on to wastewater facilities right now.
Okay. So I don't have anything on the agenda, but I'll give you some updates on where our projects are. We personally have Hydrosource Associates. They're a hydrogeologic firm. Going to be performing some geophysical work around Mead Dam, looking for groundwater for possibility of installing test wells. They're going to be doing that geophysical work later this month. Schnabel Engineering is still working on the safe yield analysis of both reservoir systems and the deformation analysis of the Mead Dam to determine what our long-term options are there. I've also asked them for a proposal to design the replacement of valves at the gatehouses at the dams. Regardless of what we do in the future with the dams, we're going to need to make sure that the valves that control the water flow out are reliable and usable. The valves that we actually have to rely on now are operational, but they're ancient and cause us a fair amount of heartburn about how long they'll actually stay on. So we're going advancing that project with a hopeful replacement this spring or summer. That project is included in the capital plan for this year. At the wastewater plant, we've got a number of projects in progress. The dewatering improvements that we recently got some grant money for, that's closing in on about 50% of the design. We're hoping to have that out to bid in a few months. Cumberland Avenue Pump Station combined sewer overflow upgrades is about 50% design. We expect to be in construction out there later this summer. And the mitigation work at the plant, the architectural upgrades and odor control and covering of some of the tanks and relocation of the haul waste receiving. The planning of that prior to design is also in progress. On a high note, at the wastewater plant, we had one of our younger employees just obtain his 3A operator certification. And we have one more who's almost ready to take his test. He's finishing up the review test now, and probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks he'll be taking on this.
I was just wondering where we're at on the investigating into wells. Like, we're just in the early stages of looking into that.
Yes, no, we're in phase 2. Phase 1 was kind of a desktop analysis where the hydrogeologists looked at all the different geologic maps that are available and drove around areas that looked like there might be water and did some site recon. Based on that, he proposed areas to do geophysical work, basically going out there with sound waves, setting them down, recording what gets bounced back to see what else is going on underneath there. We did an initial part of that phase 2, the geophysical sound waves, and he found some promising sites, but none of the sites are under our control. Some are privately owned, some are publicly owned by other municipalities or by the county. This particular part of phase 2 is out around the Mead Reservoir, so it would be on our property. So, number one, we don't have a problem getting access to do the geophysical work. And if it looks promising for test wells, we don't have a problem getting access to do the test wells, and we don't have to negotiate a purchase agreement depending on what's found. So this work's been going on and off for 3 or 4 years while we've been analyzing Mead Dam to figure out what level of investment it's going to take to get that up to present safety standards. Costs for Mead Dam originally looked affordable, then it went unaffordable, then we got it back down to affordable, then some other things happened, and it got back to unaffordable. So as the unaffordability rose, we get back into the test well and looking for groundwater sources. So it's been an ongoing process for several years, but it's on the front burner now.
Well, thanks.
When do you think some of that geophysical testing will be?
The week of the 21st, they're hoping to go out and do that, so probably take them a week to 10 days to do it, and I expect to report, within a month afterwards. So.
We talked about that one other promising property. Are you looking at that one right now?
I'd love to, but we don't have permission from the owner to access the site. And there are several others also out there, in addition to I think the one that you were working on, that look promising, but they're under private ownership by town residents, and so far have not had success in getting them to give us permission to go onto the properties.
And one other thing your people worked on was a buffer, baffling around one of your pumps, the circulating pump at that turbidity pump down at this
down at the wastewater plant. One of there's 3 types of mitigation that need to occur to promote the full development of the site: odor, aesthetics, and noise. And we have what are called surface generators, or big motors that spin impellers that stir up the mix liquor at the plant. They make a fair amount of noise. It's like a hum. So we've been looking at ways to mitigate that or eliminate it. One of our maintenance guys developed a prototype enclosure that he's installed around one of the aerators, and it worked like a charm. So we feel that the potential for noise mitigation is very promising and not going to be all that expensive.
So when you retrofit all the wastewater treatment plants around the world with this design, can the city be out of its financial hole from royalties and all that?
That'd be nice. One of our problems is the type of aeration system we use is obsolete by industry standards because it's power high. But power is cheap for us, and when you look at the strict cost benefit, the return on going to a less energy usage type of aeration system, it's like an 18 or 20-year payback. So strictly from a cost perspective, it hasn't made sense to pursue that. However, there are other measures kicking in now, noise, but also potential for odor control. So our engineers now are looking at whether it makes sense to stick with the surface aerators that are inexpensive to construct because they're already built, but use a lot of energy versus spending a few $1 million on a more efficient system, and what benefits we might get from that in terms of noise and odor reduction. And will that offset the higher cost, the higher capital cost?
Well, particularly since that would have an impact on any future development down there, it seems like an investment to investigate.
Yes, definitely. And we're also going to look at ways to stick with the system we have, but cover that so we still get the odor control and noise reduction. So there'll be a few different options to look from, and we'll have to decide which one we think fits us best for the vision we have now.
And so what's the timeline sense of how all of these options will be weighed and a decision will be eventually made? What kind of time are we looking
Within the
at?
next 4 to 6 months, I'd expect to have enough information to
Okay.
decide which direction do we want to go.
Good.
And once we select that direction, we'll be then deciding, put it up to bid for construction. Right now, we're hoping next year so that by the end of 2020, all those improvements are implemented.
That's great.
Terrific.
Thanks,
That's
John.
the plan.
Yeah. We know how plans go.
Anyone else have any other questions? If not, we'll move to the agenda items brought forward for the departments to be approved by committee and recommended to the council. The first one is a request that the mixed-use development opportunity in downtown Plattsburgh for the Durkee Street redevelopment project of the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, DRI, be awarded to prime companies. This approval is made pursuant to the terms and conditions of both the DRI grant and request for proposals issued for this project, and is in line with the Project Advisory Committee's recommendation. The Common Council will authorize the Director of Community Development to commence negotiations with prime companies for the purpose of drafting a letter of intent and a development agreement for the mixed-use development on the city-owned Durkee Street site, both of which will require subsequent council approval. Any discussion on
Okay,
that?
so I guess,
You want to move in second first?
Sorry. I'm sorry.
I'll move.
It's only members of the committee.
No, it's only, yeah, it was, never mind.
He's only reading the first.
I forgot I was no longer on the infrastructure committee.
He's only going over the agenda items.
Right, aren't you asking to have discussions? So normally don't we move in seconds, we can then discuss in here and
Well,
then
this
make a
is just a
recommendation?
committee discussion. This isn't the motion discussion. This is
Well,
just-
but normally we'll move for discussion.
Right,
Yeah, we discuss it, and then we later decide to move
Then we're
all
gonna
of
move
them
it to
or
the
some of
agenda.
them to the agenda. That's all we're doing now.
Like,
Okay.
just discuss
Just
it.
general discussion.
Just general discussion.
General discussion, then we'll vote
Yeah.
to move it to the agenda.
Don't move them over
That'll
until
be
you're
it.
ready to move them.
okay.
I would almost suggest discussion be saved to the council meeting. And the only reason I suggest that is because I have a feeling that we're gonna get a lot of the questions.
Yeah, but I just need something clarified. I guess I've been distracted, and I will admit that, but I didn't realize that we were committing ourselves to the extent that this resolution suggests. So, I thought we were going to be considering further, that now it was in our hands to decide whether to go forward with this group, and that we'd have a little bit more time to weigh the proposal. I mean, we just received the proposal as counselors last Friday, so maybe you could speak to that, Gail. I guess so, I didn't realize that we were making any kind of commitment to prime company. I thought we were simply deciding as a council that we were willing to further explore whether this was a viable proposal for the city.
Well, the official recommendation memo that was forwarded to the council by the advisory committee, the language included it mirrored this almost exactly, or what it was asking the council to commit to. And in previous meetings, I thought I had explained that this would be the next logical step, that once we receive a proposal and the advisory committee has a chance to review it, the next step would be for the council to authorize negotiations for a letter of intent and a development agreement. And that both of those documents would be subject to
Okay.
subsequent council.
Maybe I need to understand then, so I apologize for the
No, that's fine.
misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to explain to me the nature and course of negotiations and to what extent council and the public will be able to, kind of parlay some discussion.
Sure. Well, for letters of intent and development agreements, I will defer to Gail.
Okay.
Because she's gone through far more of those than I have.
Right.
Well, here's what I understand it. Basically, we're deciding today whether we're comfortable with prime companies being the developer. I guess it's kind of academic since we only have one response to the RFP.
Right.
But that, like, specifics on the actual
So that we're
project.
willing to go forward with prime company, that we have enough information to say that we're confident that this is the development company that we wish to work with. Yeah, I just don't
We're
want to
essentially
confuse
deciding on
any
the
of the
company, but not the
terms.
project per se, as is.
Well, you're
Yeah,
deciding on the
not the
company, but on
project as
general
is.
Concept.
Yeah, the other-
Yeah, the
Gail has
concept.
Some information here.
Gail wants to speak.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Please do.
So, the way this works is that you're committing to working with prime companies to try to negotiate.
The public gets to hear you that way.
Good afternoon. Hello. So the way this works is that, we put out the request for proposals, we got the proposal, we vetted it with the project advisory committee. The committee has put forward a motion to you to continue working with them.
Right.
That involves, you've seen their plan. Obviously, there's still things that need to be worked out, only because it's so conceptual, it's so early. But the idea is to put together a letter of intent to continue working forward with them, and
Right.
knowing that there's still lots of things that need to be worked out, and there'll be specific things and escape hatches if for some reason things cannot work out. Clearly, they've still got to work out things with the DRI funding, and they've got to work out their own funding.
Right.
I mean, this is a $26 million plus project that they've got to figure out all their financing for as well. So a lot of design still needs to go into it. So the intent here is, if you're confident and comfortable with what Prime Companies has presented at this point, knowing that it's conceptual, knowing that they're willing to work with you, that I will help you with putting together a letter of intent for what are the next steps for moving forward, with the goal of getting to a development agreement that's going to clearly spell out what is Prime Company's responsibilities, what are the city's responsibilities, what are the state's responsibilities.
This is my understanding. This was my understanding. There's something about the actual black and white of it that just gave me the jitters. So
That's
it's
okay.
good to have the discussion.
It was way too much wording to put into
Right.
what you needed. So
Right.
hopefully that-
Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but also we need to take this step fairly soon with regard to the state.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their deadline.
Well, I certainly don't want to
This is
interrupt
next
that.
This memo that, are you referencing this memo that you gave us? Is that the one you were originally referencing?
The PAC's recommendation memo?
I think so. As
Yeah.
it says here, January 10th, a hard deadline.
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, the state has drawn that line in the
Yes.
sand.
Right.
It's not our deadline, it's their
It's their
deadline.
deadline, correct.
And that's important.
Just for argument's sake, if we vote no, what happens? We then, another RFP would
If you
go out.
vote no,
You lose your
I
roommate.
Geez,
have
Peter,
a
you had to go
conversation,
there?
Very delicate conversation with the state about next steps.
Oh, it wouldn't be delicate.
No, it would not be
It'd be
delicate.
ruthless.
I don't think it would go very well with the state. I think they're, unfortunately, things are where they are, but
Well, I'm
These are
sorry
their
to have mucked
deadlines.
things up
These
here,
are their
but
deadlines.
honestly, I hope somebody else could have use this clarification? I hope it wasn't just me.
No,
My
it's-
old friend used to say.
No, I'm glad,
"We
that-
couldn't
this is
hook."
the exact question.
Because I think this also, yeah, this
is.
is also very, very helpful, I think, to the general public too, because
You can repeat all of that.
we're
when
getting,
the actual meeting starts.
I can't speak for all of you, but I think we're all getting a lot of questions about it.
Sure, and those are good.
Now,
We're going to
when
answer
will-
them.
Assuming that it gets voted yes, when will the next round of like public input, another meeting come in or anything like that? So I assume that's the next question from the.
That, I don't know. I mean, really, the next step that needs to happen is we need to develop the letter of intent and work that out between you and the developer and the state. So all of that's gonna take a little bit of time.
So that we
And
can
they-
meet with you then?
Yes,
If we have
yes.
questions, if we have concerns, if we're hearing things from the public that we want to clear up, we can meet with you and your office, and Matt.
Right,
And his
right.
staff.
And I can help with blocking out a schedule for what the next steps would be. And at this point, in terms of any further public, meetings, they being prime companies, would need to do more work. And they're probably not gonna do no more work until they know that they're actually
That we
moving forward
intend
with
to
the
work with
city,
them.
and that, there's some kind of an agreement. So that's the goal, is get the letter of intent pulled together, then start working on the development agreement, and hopefully within that period of time, get them to clarify what their schedule is and start figuring out all the steps that need to happen.
Well, thank you
with
for
the
this
project.
clarification, and maybe,
Sure.
as someone suggested, we can have a little bit of a rerun that's more sleek than this, that's more to the point and it just explains the process going forward.
Sure, I'd be glad to do that.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about the project, and I don't know if you can answer this or not. We received some emails from constituents with other suggestions, other questions, and so on, and when the, Curly, I can't think of his first name. Todd's, thank you. When he did his presentation, I thought it was fantastic. He explained very clearly, we really need to be looking at a 4-story building, and not a 3, and the reasons why. I wonder if it would be helpful if along the way, there could be an explanation of what are the hard and fast items that have to be part of this, and then what are the things that are negotiable, because we're getting some questions, lengthy questions from constituents that are coming into the city council email about, well, have you thought about this, and why don't we move this, and whatever. So it seems to me that it has to be 4 stories, and it has to do with, you can't maintain a full-time employment staff with a smaller building. You see what I mean? Like, what are the things that definitely have to be part of this, and then what are the things that could still possibly be shifted around? I don't know if anybody else
A
feels
lot
that
of it,
way.
I think a lot of it boils down to their economics, though, doesn't it?
Right, I think a lot of it is gonna be the economics, and as we heard the other night, some people want more parking, some people want more green space. I mean, those
You
kind
can't
of.
have both.
You can't have both, and they've clearly stated that they're willing to work with you on everything, and I know there's at least been some correspondence that I've seen, with some ideas, but again, that's, we have to get first to that letter of intent and work with that, and we can work through all those types of issues and things, but, I think what they've proposed is what they proposed. They're willing to work within that. They've already made some suggestions for parking changes that they're willing to do, and, how that all will work out really is still up in the air. So,
Well, the thing that I hope is that the council can be integral to this process of deciding what the details are in this letter of intent, and the negotiations for the development going forward.
of course,
Right.
yes.
Switch gears here a little bit. I was very impressed with the
I
developer.
was too.
The architects as well, Mackenzie Architects, McFarland and Johnson were some very good engineers. Especially at that meeting on Friday, I was very impressed. Everyone seemed very knowledgeable about what they were doing, and they also seemed very flexible and very willing to mold to not only ours but our constituents' concern. I was very happy when they came in on Tuesday after just 2 business days later. With it was a rough but a rendition of, all right, we heard you. Here's what we can throw some angled parking in here. So
Right. And how did that affect their own design of that property? did that require some setbacks for them in order to allow for that diagonal parking? So that's a pretty major, you're saying yes.
Yeah, Turner had addressed that. He said that it
Yeah.
was a combination of using the road more carefully, but also sacrificing some space on their end
Right,
too.
so that's a major concession as far as I'm
Right.
concerned.
Right, and again, this is really conceptual. They are looking at everything so high level. Once
Right.
they start getting into the specifics and what's in the right of way versus what's on the lot, what's, part of the easement along the river versus Durkee Street and Bridge Street, all
So
of that.
we can't assume that that will pan out.
All of this will need to be worked out, and that's what they were saying the other night, is that, that the streetscape and riverfront DRI projects involve those pieces as well, so we've got to work with the state and figure out what is part of those projects, what's part of this project, what's, how that's all breaking out, and obviously there's gonna have to be some adjustments with right-of-way lines and property lines, and how to make that all work.
And to get to the angled parking, because you were both commenting on how they did incorporate that into the Tuesday plan after the Friday discussion. There was quite a bit of discussion in this room that night about whether we could have angled parking on Route 9. So we've been researching that. We found the statutes. The city does have the jurisdiction for angled parking on city-maintained roads. DPW regards that, and we believe legally the state road within the boundaries of the city are city roads, not a state road. So, but we're going to obviously make sure we are absolutely in the right on that before we draw any conclusions. But we think that it appears that we can do that to angled parking. And I know there's probably 5 questions over and over again throughout that night on that very one issue. So I think we've got that about clarified, but we'll keep doing the research.
Great.
Kind of dovetail too off of what Patrick was saying. I think their history and their reputation is
Excellent.
very solid.
And I think and I think it's important to note that several counselors have, well, I think it's Patrick and Peter both were down in the area and visited the properties. I know you had
Well,
some
I didn't go down.
communication.
I haven't gone down, but I'm very familiar with a couple
Right,
of the
you've had some
properties.
communication with people who
Have
dealt with them. Mhm.
I did go down and I looked at their, one of their properties is Hamilton, I think it was Hamilton.
In Schenectady?
No, this was in
Saratoga?
Saratoga Springs.
Right, Hamilton.
And, yeah,
Something Springs, I can't remember.
Dean, he wasn't here on Tuesday, but he was here on the Friday before, showed us around. It was very nice. I was very
It is a
impressed.
nice
They showed us some of their retail facilities. It was pretty much at max occupancy. And this was the one that Todd was talking about on Tuesday. There wasn't a.
It's not
We
great.
got up on the roof
It's
and it
off
was
of the side of
area.
Saratoga.
The area around it was not nice, but but every single storefront was open and thriving. They had a fresh market in there as well. He then took us down into Saratoga to look at the hotel they created, which is a very different project. But I was very impressed with their hotel as well.
And if you'd like to know, we had talked about possibly scheduling.
Taking a trip down
Taking
to-
a trip, and this was too short of a week to make that all work, but I can help with scheduling that if you'd like, after tonight.
I wouldn't mind doing that within the next week or so. I think it would be helpful.
Thank you,
Okay,
Gail.
thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Gail.
that. Moving on to 3-2, Governance Strategy and City Operations Committee. The Common Council selects Kate Mahoney Myers to serve a 2-year term on the Plattsburgh Parking Advisory Committee to begin on January 11th, 2019, and expiring on January 10th, 2021.
I had a chance to talk to Kate, and I feel like she'll be a good candidate. I appreciate the recommendation.
Which position does she fill? Is that just?
She's a downtown business owner. She
No, okay, downtown business.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know under what category.
Yeah, many people have many hats.
Okay, and item 3-3, Common Council selects Patrick McFarland to serve a 2-year term of the Plattsburgh Parking Advisory Committee to begin on January 11th, 2019, and expiring January 10th, 2021.
Thank you, Patrick.
Let's rock it.
Thanks, Patrick.
I'll keep Mike Bissett in line.
Somebody has.
Okay, we already discussed the, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Marichelli? Marichelli, thing, so I think we'll move beyond that. Number 5, request that the mayor be authorized to sign a professional services contract with Bulwerson Wood for audit services for the years ended December 31st, 2018, 2019, and 2020. The fee for such services will be for 2018, $40,050. For 2019, $40,150, and for 2020, $40,300, and will be paid out of all funds on a prorated basis. Any discussion on that one?
We've been previously using them. I assume there's been absolutely no problems if we're looking to use them again. Is that?
No, the price that they're quoting for 18 is the same that we paid for 17. So no price increase for.
Then it'll go.
For this year.
And it'll go up 100 for this year and then 150 for 2020, but that seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it's like 0.23%.
No.
Not sure if they made a mistake on that, maybe 2.3%, but.
Well, that would make me trust them a little less if they're accounts.
Okay, well, moving on to item 6. The mayor hands down the appointment of Loretta, I hope I'm doing this right,
Rietzema.
Rietzema to the planning board for a 5-year term
That's good.
to begin on January 10th, 2019 and expiring July 26th, 2024.
Perfect.
And number 7, the mayor hands down the replacement of
Reappointment?
Kurt Gervich as an alternate member of the planning board for a 5-year term to begin on January 15th, 2019 and expiring July 26th, 2024.
I just have one question about that, Colin. Did Kurt not want to be a member? I mean, there was a vacancy and as an alternate, I don't know if that was.
It was recommended to me by the people who work with the planning board that based on his ability to serve, his time
Okay,
commitments.
I was just wondering if there was an opening, someone as an alternate.
What we ask actually is that the alternates actually attend all the
Well,
meetings
okay,
anyway,
okay.
so.
That's fine. Yeah.
Now with Lori on the planning board, assuming that she gets voted in, are there any other vacancies on the planning board? Is that at full?
No, it'd be fully staffed and 3 alternates as well. We are looking for some zoning board members. There's 1 alternate right now. I'd like to expand the number of alternates for that. If anybody's interested.
We're looking for just alternates on the zoning board, or just?
I'm probably an alternate to become a member relatively soon.
So I guess we need a motion to move 3, 1 through 5.
I'll make the motion.
Well, 1 through
Well,
7.
6 and 7 are appointments, so they don't get moved to the, they're on the agenda already as appointments, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can just move them all though.
Okay, so I'll make the motion, move them all to tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes.
Is there any old business? If not, we proceed to new business. Not seeing any, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Okay. City Infrastructure Committee meeting is now adjourned.
So we can now begin our work session for tonight's regular council meeting. An informal opportunity to discuss any items on the agenda in more detail.
It's about 5:03.
Yeah. I just have, Richard, a question on the weekly expenditure analysis. On the back page, the overtime, standby, shift differential, and so on. Am I reading this correctly that, so for the first 11 days of January, there was $37,000 in overtime for the department on the top of that list?
There's an issue with how they coded their fire holidays versus their overtime. I think that the fire holidays included for 467 hours, so we have to revise that.
Okay.
This is what we were discussing last Friday.
Last Friday.
Yeah, it looked like it was $36,000 for overtime period, but they reported the information to us for payroll purposes incorrectly for their fire holiday. Somehow, they included it as overtime.
Okay.
From the in-time reporting system, so we have to make an adjustment to that.
Okay, so that may not be an accurate figure then, I hope?
I can assure you that it's not an accurate figure.
Okay.
But I don't know exactly
What the correct figure is.
But there was 1,073 total hours, 467 were fire holiday. So the balance would be the overtime. So I'm thinking it might be 20,000 versus 17,000, something like that.
Still considerable.
My only concern is that when the pay types were put together, they weren't done incorrectly enough to overpay people. But if they were, we'll be reclaiming that. That won't be a problem. In other words, if you count an overtime hour, a holiday hour that's straight time, because we're already being paid for the day, and you pay another straight time, so you get double time for holiday. Hopefully they didn't count those as time and a half hours and overpay by 50% on that time. So we'll make sure we fix that.
Okay, thank you.
But yes, it is overstated.
Do we need to have any discussion on the budget before the regular meeting?
We could,
No, I'm asking if we do.
not unless anyone has any questions. I think everyone's prepared to vote, so. But it's never.
You had the, Mike, you sent the email about possibly amending next week or something, some of the overtime and
Yes,
money into a contingency?
yes, yes. We, if you like, we can talk about that during this
Yeah.
work session.
Yeah,
I don't anticipate that will come to a vote tonight because it will require a budget amendment.
Mhm.
It's probably best to wait until next week to do it. So maybe we could do this discussion in lieu of a resolution for initial consideration and then actually have it on the agenda for next week if that's suitable.
Personally, I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah,
Could you describe what the idea was? I saw your email, but I was in the middle
Just-
of a bunch of other things.
Just to give you some background, a few of you have expressed concerns about the proposed fund balance of $500,000, that maybe that's not enough. And then the sort of obvious offshoot of that was to look at overtime as a way to reduce expenses. And we all, know and agree that overtime across several of our departments is rather large at times. And while some of those departments have made concessions and are attempting to deal with that in 2019, and that's admirable, maybe we could do more. So one idea that was suggested was to, rather than putting all that money in each department's budget for overtime, to reduce the amount of overtime by approximately 12% across the board for every department, and put that into a contingency fund. So that if it turns out that we can figure out how to manage overtime a little better, then that money will be left over at the end of the year. And that 12% equals about $100,000.
I just have one question though, about that. When you say that it would be 12% across the board with all departments, would there be a way of kind of identifying what the 12% was from each department? So, for example, because let's say one department goes well over what their 12% was, and it comes at the expense of another department that may have only been over, say, $1,000 or $2,000. compared to being over $60,000 or $70,000. So what was taken, essentially it was taken from one department's budget, they should still have it. And not at the, so one department's overtime excess is not at the expense of another department's.
If I understand what you're saying, the common term for that is we don't want to rob Peter
Peter
and
to pay Paul, exactly.
Yeah, no, I can see that as being necessary control we should build into this.
But that wouldn't increase the surplus at all, because it would be a contingency line item as an expense. It's just, if I understand you correctly, you're saying take it out of overtime, put it in contingency, so it's there, just in case, but maybe you're saying that there would be a way to, hopefully the managers evaluate their overtime and keep it low?
Yes.
But that wouldn't increase the surplus from 500,000.
Well,
It would still be an expense item in the contingency line.
if the contingency is not used, it becomes surplus. Is that correct?
It wouldn't change what's budgeted, because all you're doing is reclassifying an overtime appropriation to a contingency appropriation. But what would happen in actuality, if you underspent overtime by that 100,000, it would add 100,000 to the surplus to be developed by the end of the year, provided the surplus of 500,000 comes out.
And then it would be upon us to be sure to monitor the overtime and.
Yes. And by the way, Peter, I was pretty impressed by the fact that you picked up on that this week, and that's probably what we need to do every week, is see where the trends are and see what we can do as a council to assist with that.
And I think another part of the discussion has been the suggestion that we ask for some plans from each department to reduce overtime within their departments. Because I think there are kinds of scenarios in every department which make overtime necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be educated about what the real needs are and whether or not staffing adjustments could be made in order to reduce overtime. So it's just a matter of communicating with departments about what their actual needs are and if they can make any accommodations in their own staffing to address the problem.
It's not all charged over the general fund either.
Right.
We're
Right.
water and
You're-
sewer also.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. What I
DPW has done a good job of keeping their budget
That's
in
right.
line.
Very
Yeah.
much.
That's worth noting, absolutely.
What I alluded to was the general fund, but you're absolutely right. It's much larger amount if it's across all the funds. I wish I had a chart to show you, but I don't. Not at my fingertips.
I think the bottom line is we're trying to address it and we're trying to find solutions and we're hoping to work together in order to do that.
Well, just to make all of you feel good about what you've done, you've crafted a budget this year that is, the tax rate is low, there's a surplus, but I think we're all concerned that perhaps the surplus is a little low, and we would like to see a little more cushion or a little more padding there, and addressing overtime is one way to do that.
It's better than where we started Friday.
Absolutely.
And what I think is extremely important to emphasize is we did that without cutting jobs.
Yes, we did.
It's huge.
It is huge. Any other questions or concerns about
I
this?
do have a question about the contingency fund and how would the decision be made about where the money goes? So you've got money, so somebody wants or needs overtime or whatever. Who makes the decision? How is it allocated? Just wondering how that's done.
I think it's just an accounting trick. It's not like, it's not an account that managers would go to. It basically is what it said, like, on Friday, this is the way I understand it. We raised some departments' overtime to more accurately reflect the needs, so that we didn't come in at the end of the budget with well, this is what was budgeted, but we're this amount over the overtime anyways, the city has to absorb those costs. I think one thing Mike was talking about is kind of keep track of those throughout the year, so maybe we can prevent it from getting there in the first place. But I think the other thing is, if we move it to contingency, it's just an accounting trick. Money's not actually moving, I could be wrong, but just each.
We're not creating money.
Yeah, each
It's a
manager would
savings
just
account.
see that their budget line for overtime is a little less and maybe be enticed to keep it below that.
I think I
Is
can.
that a-
What recourse do we have? I mean, if we, as we're monitoring it, see that
You would have to authorize
the
an
trends-
interdepartmental transfer to move money from the contingency
Right.
fund back to a department.
Right,
Yes.
Right.
but
Each one of
I
those
guess
would
my,
have to be
my
authorized.
question is.
That's what I'm
what-
asking. It would need to be
What
authorized, right?
resources do we have if we see that a department or departments are trending over budget? What resources do we have to say we're not going to,
Well, I think technically it would require approval from the council to exceed a budget, would it not?
Well, I know, but then that's after the fact, because they've already accrued that overtime.
An adopted budget adjustment has to be presented.
but it's done after the fact, after the,
Yeah,
Not
the overtime has
necessarily.
been worked.
It doesn't have to be.
okay.
It can be more proactive than what we do now, which is look at it and say, gee, we're over.
We're given this tool each and every
Right,
week
that's
to
what- right.
help us track what you use tonight.
Well, that's
So-
why planning and kind of the development of a policy, which we both contribute to.
Measurement and control has to be instituted to do what you're talking about.
Mhm.
The measurement's there, but then you have to say, we're gonna control it.
Right, we may not allocate money from that fund.
You might have to say to someone, no more overtime.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're asking, Elizabeth, and I think this is the key to everything, is when money hasn't been spent over the year, it becomes unencumbered fund balance. That's the key to having a good budget. Because we need to have some extra wiggling room, because there's something happens every year. Things come up. It is critical that we have, at one time, we had a $6 million fund balance. That was super. But we don't any longer have, I believe, any fund balance. We need to have that so that we can operate more efficiently. If something comes up, we have an opportunity, whatever, we won't have to worry about, uh-oh. But it becomes part of the fund balance, and that's really what the goal is to develop some fund balance every year so that we will have more opportunities.
Okay.
The last answer for Councilor Gibbs' question is, there's currently $271,000 budgeted in the contingency fund, contingency account in the general fund. In order to spend that, the council has to adopt a budget resolution to move those funds that are appropriated to another account. So it's your decision how it's going to be spent.
And if you recall from the Friday session, that 271 wasn't a number that was arrived at randomly. There are items associated with that aren't contractual obligations at this point, but we expect will be contractual obligations within the year in various categories. So it's not really a slush fund, a cushion there. We expect to pay that, but we aren't obliged to pay that yet.
But if what we expect to pay comes in less, then it can be appropriated from what the surplus is in that fund or account, let's say. It's not a fund, it's actually an account. It can be moved to another account to be spent on your discretion. But it's adopted budget resolutions.
So is the smart thing for us to do to add this approximately $100,000 in current overtime budgeting to a separate contingency fund, or to fold it into this
It can go in the same one.
same one? Okay.
And we would know if we were to do it, to reclassify between 12 and 13% of every overtime account into that account. We would know exactly what left each account to go into that account and what can be brought back out.
Okay.
Back into the overtime.
And we would know just exactly how much we took from each department's
Sure.
overtime.
Sure. That's the way the budget transfer, in this case is what it's called, not an adjustment, because we're not changing the whole budget up or down. This would be a transfer from one account to another, really reclassifying how the appropriation is going to be spent. So you know exactly how much left, which account to go to the contingency account.
So
And then
from-
before it's moved back, you'd have to adopt the budget transfer to authorize that.
So from a controls perspective, what I'm hearing you saying is, I think you've appreciated how we're trying to do the monthly reports and benchmarking each month, how we're doing against the budget and all that kind of stuff. And these are relatively innovative for this council. I think maybe what you're asking is even more detail and tracking things even more closely and staying on top of things and starting to recognize when things are trending towards going over limits. On almost a council by council basis. Obviously, there's still some systems we'd have to put in place, but I think it's prudent to look at things with that kind of detail. Of course, your effort with OpenGov was going to make that a lot easier. We're still hoping
Yes.
to do something like
We
that.
should talk next week.
But I'll take that as direction to see what we can put in place anyway.
So are we agreeing we're gonna do this then?
No, not yet at least.
Not yet?
Not yet.
We're gonna put it on next week?
Be on next week's agenda.
Okay.
So we have plenty of time to discuss it among ourselves
Mm-hmm.
between now and next Thursday. And to have your questions answered.
Good.
Do other municipalities do this? Some
I don't know.
contingency funds like this?
We
Well,
may have hatched
the-
this one all on our own.
Well, I'm wondering if other municipalities do it, and is it successful for them to manage this portion of the budget?
Sure, other municipalities use contingency funds for various things, but as a way to address overtime costs, I don't know.
I think the question of what other municipalities do to control overtime is a subject that's worthy of research.
I do too. We said that together.
We
It
don't
must be
have to-
important.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
And there's a saying, you can't manage it unless you first measure it. So I think the first step is to get the information to you all so you can see more fine, more detailed trends
Yes.
before it's too late.
And every one of our funds is represented in this weekly report, so that's helpful.
And since you've always seen those numbers on the right-hand side, it shows you the percentage, how you're trending throughout the year, but we'll probably make that more graphical and bring that information more forward somehow, just like you see for the monthly reports.
Yes.
And it can't just be broken down quarter by quarter, because
Right.
there are some departments whose overtime within a certain quarter is much larger than it may be in the first quarter, it may be much greater during the second or third quarters.
I find the best tool, and you probably see it in some of your other boards, is this month, the same month in the previous year.
Right.
Benchmark it that way.
I was just about to suggest that.
Any further discussion on items on the agenda tonight? Seeing no one, would you like to take a 5-minute recess before we begin then?
Sounds fantastic. One of these days, Mike, you explain some of this to me.
Yeah, sure.
Not right now, but
Sure.
I'm looking at this, and I don't really understand what I'm looking at, because I don't know how municipal budgets work. I'm trying to learn as much as possible. We don't have to do that now.
Okay.
I mean, I encourage you.
Yeah.
And I'll be back.
5 minutes.
Because I anticipate we're gonna have some questions too. Yeah, I just, I told you my first career was banking, and it's just simple debits and credits, it wasn't this.
Right.
My God, these are the worst chairs in the world.
They are, aren't they?
I don't recall those examples.
They're old, too.
Given copies of the engineer.
No,
Did you
I'm
text
not very
me
good at
too?
texting.
If it's from our committee, I'm not.
did text you.
Oh, I did. Me defensive? No.
I don't actually nominate anybody for that.
Went through mad.
Woodchuck category.
We were weirded out by the fact
The
that.
downtown owner business manager. It's nominated
That's
by
right.
the governance and strategy committee,
Right.
which is why I texted both of you.
That's right.
Right now we have 9 men on it, and if in fact Kate gets appointed,
Well, we
she'll
have
be the
Kate,
first
that's gonna be
woman.
another, yeah.
So
Mahoney Meyer. She's the chiropractor.
I didn't say anything.
I don't know her either. I talked to her.
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned that she looks like to be really good.
Yeah,
Did anybody end up getting something for North Country Center?
I keep football, tossing the football back to Matt. I don't know how to get a hold of her. He's having trouble getting a hold of her. I just gave the name and the contact information. He said that something about an inoperable phone number, so I just have to get back to Richard, or he does. I think he reached out to Robert,
But I'm thinking if you're comfortable with it, that's something that makes sense to maybe get initial consideration.
Right.
Because the first meeting's on Tuesday. If it's good, if we're okay, I talked to her, she's fine.
I got no problem with that, but it's not an issue, it has any real financial repercussions, any controversy to it, or any elaborate discussion necessary.
No.
So,
No, I mean, I think Patrick has taken the initiative to speak it to this person. I rely upon his recommendation, and I think we could go
You're the
forward.
co-chairs of the committee that opposed
Yeah.
to anyway, so.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what form the mayor hands down the appointment. How do we do it?
Oh, great.
He would need to initiate.
Okay.
I think you could do a survey.
I can.
All you guys are
The
doing.
government,
This sounds like a
okay,
very good
right,
quote.
and then put her name in. You, why don't you write down her name? I forgot, Mary Ann.
John and have to be
So 378 doesn't include these materials?
Does not
Excludes it. Gotcha.
Installation, demolition existing, and then obviously these exclusion. Have these materials that can be run through the ground. Now, there is an alternate. If we come in and scan what's there for installation, it's decent. Even though you're not.
Okay, great. Amazing.
I put Joel as a contact. I talked to the demo contractor that actually did take the asked me about utilities and figured out he's in town next Friday.
Man, you're a get things done guy. You're a busy guy, that's why we ask you to do more stuff.
Bill, and we kind of explained to Bill what you were looking for. If theoretically we were to be in the same campus as they are, so we gave a square footage, change the layout a little bit where potentially we could put this area here, like a more modular type of site. Than ag facility. So we find that the lightweight, like, we put a box here.
I can't hear a miracle worker.
That being said, I think
You know, your other site is well out of the way. I don't think if there's any development down there, really be in the middle of anything. But,
I can pick away at it. If I have spare time, I can get down there to compost. Cleaning up. Sound like you guys have to be there.
no immediate plans for anything. There's no agenda, just keeping our options open at all times.
Hopefully that helps. I don't know your contact information, so I would say.
I'll follow it up. Appreciate it. Thank you. just getting estimates for,
You want to sign some more of these?
Sure.
Okay.
we, John, that'd be great coming together.
All right, what am I signing?
Donate. You might be able to get the treatment done between 2 and
Look
7.
on here and see if it matches.
Where's my phone?
Let's see, what's the amount?
Right here.
118.
I don't know if it's done easy, go ahead and much bigger decision, need a lot more analysis.
4,897. It says grand total,
I think some
118,238.
repairs.
Total payroll.
Okay.
Doesn't match.
Yes, let's see now, there's a reason for that. Because there's, what's the difference?
489, you're a couple $100.
Oh,
Oh my God. 251.10. That's the difference.
all right, Mr. Marks.
All right, so I'm not going to sign it. So I'll leave it there. Okay, this one, oh no, this is, so warrant.
Sometimes they have like a second payroll, maybe with an adjustment on it.
You have to go 3/4 of the way down to the email.
What am I signing? What is this?
That is a journal.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Get him to look at it.
Absolutely.
Oh, I see now. Oh.
Battery life.
Yeah.
Yep, I do. Okay.
I don't know why that is, to be honest. But I
All right, so that's that.
Hello.
How you doing?
How are you doing?
Hello, Dee.
How's Julie? How's Julie?
Oh, she's fine. She's retired.
Yeah, I thought she'd been retired for a while, but had been working kind of like per diem.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but CBPA's laid off all their per diem people.
Oh, they did.
So she's out of a job, but she's collecting unemployment. And she likes it.
I bet.
Mike, where is this one?
You know what I just realized? Where's this one?
Okay, so this is MLD claims, right?
Okay, yeah, MLD. So what's the amount for?
14,34.
Contemplating.
Just way too old.
I stumped you again.
These guys are trying to jumpstart us here, so let's
Have to do this after.
begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Armstrong?
Here.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor Gibbs?
Here.
Counselor Ensel?
Here.
Counselor McFarland?
Present.
Counselor Moore?
Here.
This is a pretty notable night for us each year. This is the night that our governance group here will pass their 2019 budget. I sure appreciate all the hard work done last Friday on this, on that marathon session. I think that format, I think all agree, worked very, very well. And we'll certainly want to adopt similar formats for that really in-depth and extensive discussion next year as well. But you all recognize the challenges. We're a city where our tax base, adjusted for inflation, tends to be not keeping up with inflation, but our expenses tend to exceed inflation. So each time we do this, we have to make some very difficult choices, and I was very pleased with the level of analysis and some of the solutions you came up with to address some of the expenses that, they're good expenses. You know, the firefighters finally got their contract, for instance, that came up near the end of the year, and you accommodated that. And I really want to applaud you and thank you for what you're going to present to us today. That's all I have.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on January January 3rd, 2019, the organizational meeting held on January 3rd, 2019, and the special meeting of the Common Council held on January 4th, 2019 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Renzel. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved, the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending January 9th, 2019, in the amount of $118,238.80 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Counselor Kelly and second by Counselor Gibbs. Discussion?
There is some discussion, Mr. Mayor. The warrant to be signed has a different amount than the number on the resolution. Well, could we take a look at that perhaps after the meeting and resolve it?
I'm saying
Well,
the same.
shouldn't we do it now before we?
so.
Yeah.
Before we vote, okay. There's 118,489.70.
Yeah, the last item on that chart in your left hand, right there,
Uh-huh.
915 pay type, down at the bottom, for $290.40 or something like that.
Oh, inside, con,
On the very bottom.
Very bottom left.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. This item, deduction refund, $250.90.
Okay, yeah, that was the difference. so,
Yes.
Okay,
That actually hasn't been posted as a payroll expense. So what
Okay.
you're approving is a payroll expense. We have to determine if that is actually going to be a payroll expense or a refunded
Okay.
deduction.
okay.
Catch though.
It's a difference.
Thank you very much,
Good catch, Councilor.
Ms. Marks. Thank you.
I will sign that now.
I think we're starting off the council year looking at these things very, very closely. I think that can only be a good thing. I appreciate that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You have your routine reports in your electronic packet. Is there any additional to add? Governance strategy and city operations, Councilor Armstrong.
Yeah, I'd just like to take this opportunity to say that I and other counselors have been in conversation about how to go forward with the footbridge. Want to assure the public that, all kinds of stakeholders are being communicated with, and the council, I believe, is really committed to finding solutions. And I think you stated as much last time, but I just wanted to give an update regarding that. And I'm hopeful that we can achieve a solution very soon.
Thank you. City infrastructure, Councilor Moore.
We just had our meeting tonight, and we moved several resolutions to the agenda. No one missed it.
Finance and budget, Councilor Kelly.
Yes, we're going to vote tonight to adopt the 2019 council budget. And it is our budget, but there is no way we could have done it without the assistance of course, the mayor's budget, our 5 to 10 year plan. All of our department heads worked very, very hard to trim expenses and in some cases increase revenue. So it's just been a wonderful team effort this year, and I'm so happy about it. And I'll be honest with you and tell you, when Councilor Armstrong suggested that each department develop a budget narrative, I believe she called it, I groused about it. But then she carefully collected all of that information and put it on our website
I
for
didn't
the
do that. Beth did.
Beth, for the public to view, and the end result was really, really great. So I would encourage everyone in the public, as well as us, to go look at that and read, why were these budgeting decisions made? So Councilor Armstrong, thank you for doing that. And thank you so much, Mr. Marks, for your guidance throughout this whole process. It's just been a good year, I think. And we look forward to our budget and our operations this year and seeing how they turn out, so. And you get all the credit for our marathon budget session last Friday. That was your idea, so it was a great idea and something I hope we can do in the future. So thank you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Public safety, Councilor Gibbs.
Well, I don't have anything to update since I'm new to the committee, but we did talk yesterday, and I asked Mayor Reed if he would give me access to the various departments that I'm going to be involved with, because I think I know what they do, but I really want to know what they do, and so I was hoping that I could talk to them and maybe tour some facilities and have a stronger understanding of what they do. Peter, I'm not, Councilor Ansel, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if you're interested in doing that as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you told me that the best way to go about that is to request that from Beth, yes?
I
Okay,
think all
so
the
I'll be
department
doing
heads
that.
would be happy to oblige and show you their operations. That applies to all the committee chairs.
Thank you.
Plattsburgh Public Library, Councilor Ansel.
Really nothing to report. I believe Councilor Armstrong, the first library meeting is the last Wednesday of the month, so
Tuesday.
I'm sure we'll have, Tuesday of the month, excuse me. We'll have something to report following.
Thank you. And MLD Board President, Councilor McFarland.
No real updates at this time. However, I will note that the moratorium is still in place. I am hoping to put forth a resolution probably at the next council meeting to get rid of the moratorium. It's been in place for too long. There's not any legislation being discussed in regards to it, although I know that we were discussing a noise resolution. So let's get this done quickly. I know there's been people anxiously waiting for that, so hopefully I can get that on the agenda.
I know we spoke about it earlier, so maybe we can
Does it
discuss it a
require a
little
public
bit
hearing
further
to-
as far as.
No, the moratorium, which was enacted by a local law, has specific language saying it can be terminated by resolution, which would not require any public hearing.
Other than that, I have no updates at this time.
Thank you. Resolve the reports that is listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Ensel's kind of got sent, and Councilor Armstrong. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No correspondence, recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills on by the common council for the week ending January 11th, 2019 in the amount of $1,157,315.07 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Armstrong. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is an opportunity for members of the public to please come and address the council. We had our organizational meeting last week, so this will be the first opportunity. Since then, please know we ask you to state your name, your address, confine yourself in this public comments to issues on the agenda. There is another public comment period for other issues unrelated to agenda items at the end of the meeting as well. And if there are multiple people speaking on one issue, the organizational rules say we ask 2 speakers on each side of one issue, so we can allow enough sufficient time for all the other individuals to speak on their items of concern as well. So please come forward. Please.
Yes, please.
My name is Tara Glenn. I live at 15 Tom Miller Road here in the city. I apologize, I'm getting over a cough. I am here in regards to the mixed-use development opportunity for downtown Plattsburgh for the Jerky Street lot tonight that I know is up for a vote. And I am here asking that the council consider at least postponing this vote until the public has had more time to consider what's been proposed. At this point, at least from my perspective, we've had approximately 48 hours because of the public reveal on Tuesday. It simply just hasn't been enough time for a lot of people to be able to look at it, to digest what's going on, look into whom Prime Companies is. or really have a full-fledged out opinion about it. There are some concerns among the public already about what the proposal they're putting forward is. While I'm aware that that's just a jumping off point and that there will be ongoing negotiations about what it will look like, considering at this point this is our only option that there's been, and we're concerned about the city engaging in a contract with them already and then negotiating those details out later. The public, or a lot of people that I've spoken to from Strong Towns as well as other community groups and people that I've talked to, we'd really just ask for more time for us to be able to look at it, for us to be able to reach out to our individual council members and discuss our concerns before the vote is held. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to be able to come and clarify some of the schedule? I don't actually think we're entering into a formal contract with the entity at this time, so it'd probably be helpful to clarify that to the public.
Hi, Gail Henderson King, Whitenburg. So the motion that's before you for the mixed-use development proposal for prime companies for the Durkee Street site is to continue to work with the developer to work to get to a letter of intent for the proposed project and then eventually get to a development agreement, knowing that there's a lot of details that still need to be worked out and there's escape routes if for some reason things do not work out. So at this point, it's so conceptual that it's hard to get your hands around it all until more details are figured out. And that's why you go into a letter of intent agreement to begin to start working through all those details, as was discussed the other night at the public meeting. Tonight, the reason that there's this deadline is really being driven by the state. For the use of the DRI funds, I don't know if you recall, they wanted you to make a decision back the end of November. And I came to you and said, we need to get more information from the developer about their proposal. We went back to them, asked some additional questions. They responded, they did their presentation, and the state said, fine, this is the final date. We need you to make some type of an agreement. So this agreement is not to cast in stone that project. The agreement is to continue to work forward with prime companies with the goal of putting together a letter of intent for the project and then eventually getting to a development agreement, knowing that there's a lot of things that still need to be worked out.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
When's the deadline set by the state?
Pardon?
When was the deadline set by the state?
November 30th.
No, and what's the
end date
deadline
is-
for?
The deadline.
January 10th.
Is January 10th now. It
Correct.
was originally November 30th. We got it moved to tonight, or today, January 10th.
Oh, thank you.
Any other members of the public? Please.
My name's Terry Miron. I'm not sure, I don't want to waste anybody's time if this isn't the appropriate time to make kind of a educated recommendation on how I've reviewed the design and how I think that design could be improved. If it's premature, I'll wait.
We'd love to hear it.
Okay. So I was part of the original Destination Master Plan Committee that was appointed by the county. And one of the things that we took a serious look at is how unusual and how special Plattsburgh is as a community that has orientation both to the 6th largest freshwater lake in the country and the Saranac River. And how unfortunate it has been in the past that the city has not oriented itself to those assets, which when you think about it, and this is a factual researched item, water is the most attractive environment for humans in the whole, out of everything in the entire world, right? So this property is, I guess, I own 223 apartments in the city of Plattsburgh. I manage 15 for my son. I'm very familiar with the market. I'm involved with the National Apartment Association, so I'm aware of development and a lot of things about it. I think a developer of this size is a wonderful opportunity for the city. I think they're minimizing their risk by having very little, it's mixed use, but there's only, I think 13,550 square feet devoted to commercial use. If you look at it, that's about the amount of square footage that it would take to do 2 full-service restaurants. I think that when you take a look around the country and go back to considering water as such an important resource, there are so many cities that are understanding the value of providing restaurants and entertainment along the water. I mean, you'll find them all over the country. San Antonio, Texas is a premier development for that. They actually, their Riverwalk is more visited by far than the Alamo. It is, people just love it. It's, you know, Disney created the concept of you know, being immersed in an environment. All they are is a simple amusement park. But nobody thinks of them as an amusement park because they put you in an environment that is above average and beyond. Well, that's what water does too. And to me, Plattsburgh can be probably one of the most special cities, maybe even in the country, because of its natural resource advantages. And I would just hate this development. So if you take a look at that lot, in my opinion, and you say, where is the most valuable real estate there? For me, I'd draw a line along Durkee Street, and I'd draw a line along the river. For me, one of the most cardinal sins that was allowed to happen was the developer that built that office building and put a darn garage on the river and spoiled part of our opportunity to make this city special. You want people to go downtown, create an immersive environment that wants people to enjoy it. We have an opportunity in our downtown to do something that Route 3 can't do. They don't have any water. They don't have anything that can create that special environment. We do. I would strongly urge that the developer be maybe even required to use some space. And if they oriented themselves more to the river than they are to Bridge Street and to Durkee Street, I think there would be a lot of value to that. I mean, if you can picture, you know, at least a couple restaurants along the river, and one of the things that, well, okay, a couple restaurants along the river with some decks out there. I mean, I think it would be, commercial space in downtown is probably hard to get the value that they want, but there's demand for restaurants to go there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Terry.
I didn't talk too much.
No.
Thanks, Terry.
Any other individuals like to please come up and address the council? Seeing none, let's continue, please.
Resolved that the common council approve the amendments to the mayor's proposed budget for 2019, representing increases in estimated revenues for all funds of $90,357, and increases to appropriations for all funds of $410,816, as evidenced by the budget comparison report included as support for this resolution.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Rensel. Discussion? There was extensive discussion in the work session earlier already. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Gibbs?
Yes.
Councilor Rensel?
Yes.
Councilor McFarland?
Yes.
Councilor Moore?
Yes.
Motion to adopt the common council proposed 2019 budget last revised on January 8th, 2019.
Moved by Councilor Rensel, second by Councilor McFarland. Discussion? Roll call?
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Gibbs?
Yes.
Councilor Rensel?
Yes.
Councilor McFarland?
Yes.
Councilor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved that in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the proposed 2019 budget last revised on January 8, 2019, as evidenced by the attached 2019 budget resolution making appropriations for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2019 and ending December 31st, 2019, and levying the property tax for the fiscal year 2019, as further evidenced by the attached 2019 tax warrant for the City of Plattsburgh and the County of Clinton's 2019 tax warrant certifying the City of Plattsburgh's share of the 2019 county tax levy. The City of Plattsburgh report of the summary of 2019 operating budget by fund is further attached with the 30-year tax assessment, tax rate, tax levy comparison report, the city assessors reports of the 2018 tax roll, omitted taxes, and S-495 exemption and tax report, and the complete common council budget dated January 8, 2019, along with the 2019 capital expenditure plan.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, and seconded by Councilor Ensel. Discussion.
I think we should probably mention what the tax levy and mill rate is.
The mill rate comes out to what, 1.70?
1.77.
1.77%. We did look in at your behest to see how that compares with the inflation rate. Actually, the mill rate increase is lower than the inflation rate increase, and the total levy increase is also well within and below the tax cap.
2.24%.
And the tax cap allowed, what, 2.8?
2.86%.
2.86%. So congratulations on staying well below both the tax cap and the rate of inflation for northeast cities.
Do we vote yet? Good.
Any other further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the proposed 2019 management position schedule and 2019 manager salary scale as amended by the management compensation plan and policy changes adopted in 2018 with effective date of January 1st, 2019, and further amended by the 2019 adopted budget.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion, please. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor
Yes.
McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request.
I'd like to make a
therefore the-
motion to waive the reading and move to resolution.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Gibbs. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the item itself?
We're on E.
Yeah.
E.
Once again, I think, as was mentioned in our committee meeting, Councilor McFarland had an opportunity to go down and visit some of the properties that Prime has constructed and is involved in, and I'm familiar with a couple of their properties, and also have had an opportunity to speak to people that have been involved with them, and they're properties that I've seen, that I'm familiar with, I'm impressed with, and the people that I've spoken with that have done business with them had nothing but superlatives to say about them.
Yeah. And I think, in essence, what we're doing is just agreeing to enter into an agreement. We're not signing an agreement. We're agreeing to negotiate. And I think we have a substantial amount of evidence this is a good decision. We have the recommendation of the Project Advisory Committee, which I must say, I felt really good that there was a representative of strong towns among that group. I saw the rubric. I saw the scoring. I feel like council has come up to speed as they had meetings with the Prime Group and their associates. So I'm looking at this as the opportunity to, and I really feel badly that when I did that, Mr. Miron deferred so immediately, because we want to have those kinds of conversations. We want to feel as though we can tailor this project to our needs, and that's why I can vote with good conscience here.
I will say I agree with everything Mr. Miron said as far as opening up Plattsburgh to the waterways. The one thing I don't think this project could do that because there is the streetscape and riverfront access.
But
which
he,
is
I
put
think
on by
he was just
Saratoga
talking about
Associates.
reorienting some of the buildings so that they could look onto, or at least.
Over the river.
Some of the commercial space could look like a restaurant, could look over the river.
Toward the river.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
The Governance Strategy and City Operations Committee of the Common Council selects Kate Mahoney Myers to serve a 2-year term on the Plattsburgh Parking Advisory Committee to begin on January 11th, 2019, and expiring January 10th, 2021.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Gibbs. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Common Council selects Patrick McFarland to serve a 2-year term on the Plattsburgh Parking Advisory Committee to begin on January 11th, 2019, and expiring January 10th, 2021.
Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
I'll abstain.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved, in accordance with the request, therefore, the Common Council authorizes the implementation and
I'd
funding
like
in the
to
first
waive the
instance-
reading and move the motion, please.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor McFarland. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. Discussion on the item itself. Again, you discussed it during the infrastructure meeting earlier. Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the mayor is authorized to sign a professional service contract with Boulders and Wood CPAs PC for audit services for the years ended December 31st, 2018, 2019, and 2020. The fee for the services will be 2018, $40,050, 2019, $40,150, and 2020, $40,300. It will be paid out of all funds on a prorated basis.
Moved by Counselor Kelly and second by Counselor Gibbs. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
I'd like to hand down the appointment of Loretta Rietzema to the Planning Board for a 5-year term to begin on January 10th, 2019 and expiring July 26th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
And I'd like to hand down the reappointment of Kurt Gurvich as an alternate member of the Planning Board for a 5-year term to begin on January 15th, 2019, expiring July 26th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
There are no travel requests at this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration? Counselor Armstrong?
Yes. I'm going to read it because I have to refer back to the wording. And I'll give you a copy. The Governance, Strategy, and City Operations Committee of the Common Council selects Mary Ann Buchholz-Ryder to serve a 2-year term on the Plattsburgh Parking Advisory Committee to begin on January 11th, 2019, and expiring January 10th, 2021. So I'm wondering if we,
I'll make a motion to enact Rule 4.
Moved
You need a
by
second, don't you need a second first for the?
this is, I just presented the item for initial consideration.
So you can second.
Yeah, second.
So moved by Counselor McFarland, second by Counselor Ensel. Discussion? And note that for our application of Rule 4, there are no fiscal impacts of any sort
Right.
to analyze.
There's also a component that you should explain the urgency. in the-
Oh, yes, and we would like Ms. Buchholz-Ryder to be able to attend the first meeting, which is next Tuesday.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just have a quick question. With the Parking Advisory Committee, I know there was one member that was someone that was supposed to be appointed that had a lot of familiarity with ADA and.
That's the one that's still.
We're still working on that.
Okay. Okay.
So there's 12 people on the, or there's 12 positions on the committee. Right now with the 3 that were just appointed, that's, Marion would be the 11th. So there's still 1 more to go. There's a quorum, so the first meeting happens.
Okay. No, I was just wanted to
Yeah.
check and make sure about that.
Been a motion to invoke Rule 4 and to move this item. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Is there any new business or additional council reports at this time? This is now time for the public to please come address the council on any issue of mutual concern.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Davies. I'm 205 Margaret Street. So I have a question because I'm not exactly quite sure how to approach it. So I'm actually probably seeking education or just voice, I mean, whatever you take from this. I work at a local bar downtown and I received a parking ticket for the band that was last week on Thursday. And again, if I violated, absolutely, I understand, I pay that parking ticket. But my concern is when I was going to park, on the streets you can't park from, I believe it's from 10 until 6 a.m. And then in the city lots for the north and the south, I checked today just to verify, you can't park there from 2 until 6 a.m. And so that creates a gap for people who are in the service industry. So it doesn't really matter where I parked, I was going to get a ticket regardless. I just kind of want to know what your plans are for service industry workers, because if we don't have a place to park, you don't have service workers. So I'm just kind of wondering what you intend to do if you don't have a solution, or if you do, what is your solution?
Could you
Yes.
Could you say that one more time where you couldn't park or?
From 10 until I believe it's 10 until 6 a.m. on the streets you can't park. And then in the city lots, it's from 2 to 6. So there is no crossover. All bars close at 2 a.m. It takes us, at least for me, it takes about half an hour to 40 minutes to close my bar. So I'm just curious what you intend to do, because again, if I don't have anywhere to park, I'm gonna lose my job and there's nobody to bartend. So, and it's not just for bars, it's restaurants as well, so.
I do mention to the public there is a parking advisory committee that's being formed. The first meeting is Tuesday of next week. At what time?
Tuesday at 6.
At 6 p.m. It will be an open meeting. They'll be discussing future policies for parking in the downtown. And I'm sure it's not any consolation for you at all, but I got a parking ticket today too. Any other individuals like to please come and address the Common Council? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Moore and second by Councillor Kelly. What I imagine is going to be a string of consecutive unanimous votes so far in this council for 2019. Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you folks for coming in. Do come to the parking meeting on Tuesday at 6 p.m. here.
Now, do you have enough signatures for this one? You only need 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know, because I thought it made it look like you needed 6 signatures.
Okay.
This one I can't find either.
Good, Elizabeth, how are you?
Hi, Elizabeth. Hi. Get a quick one. Hey.
Terry Mira? Mira? Mira. Yeah. Also, just Terry Mira. Okay, all right.
There you go.
Yeah, he didn't come up.
Concept.
Did he come up tonight?
He wants to see the details as they get fleshed out.
What's your name?
See, there's a possibility there for some
And I'll try to get that tobacco law.
Do you need a signature?
I got a recommendation from Dean, it's all written up. I had him
Sign the agenda, basically?
so I still had to work out whether or not I had listened to Dana's actually starting tonight. I just haven't worked out.
They tore down everything.
I did, I can't remember now. I think she gave me some model legislation.
I saw
I don't think.
What have I signed?
I think so.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. This is for like.
like an insurance
Yeah, well,
policy.
I think as in any ordinance,
You buy the
you have to have
insurance
some
by joining the land bank and paying your dues, and then any claims
that
you
there are
have, you
complications behind
send to
people's
the land bank.
behavior.
Plus, they
and so forth,
facilitate
and maybe you don't want to
things like they can
penalize
get
addicts,
deals
but
on
I think it would be
tipping fees to take personally
to
rate
not
levels
use
that
that.
Somebody would be willing to
All right,
spend
well,
$35 million.
all right, Danielle.
I can't think of a time in our lifetime when somebody's made that big mistake downtown.
In terms of the budget, do you just want to give it a
Thank you.
Yes,
Progress.
we're very pleased that we were able to come in below the state mandated tax cap this year for the first time in a few years. And
Thank you.
that also we anticipate a surplus of $500,000 at the end of the year, perhaps more if we manage spending well. So, very exciting time. We had a whole lot of great input from our department heads to help us craft that budget. And of course, our chairman, Mr. Marks, that got us through the whole process. So it's just been a great team effort throughout. I'm so pleased.
We're going over the books, you and I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I signed